At 12:14 a.m., my cedar sign that read 91912 was still smoking when I opened a county envelope that said my shoreline rights were suspended by 6:02 a.m. Two guys in khaki pants were pacing my porch like they owned the dock, calling me non-compliant, like I was a dented trash can. I remember thinking that if a place can have a heartbeat, mine just flatlined on the boards I rebuilt with my own hands. My name is Caleb Porter, 35, the quiet kind who fixes what breaks. I used to restore old buildings until a scaffold folded under my best friend and took the air out of the room. I boxed my tools, swore I was done. Then I found a ruin. No one wanted a fisherman's cabin from 1925 on Blue Heron Lake in Ashford County, Georgia, outside the gates of Maple Cove Estates, where hedges line up like soldiers and the cul-de-sacs smell like fresh mulch and new rules. The cabin was buckled and tired. The dock slumped, windows boarded with rusted license plates. But it had a spine, and when I put my palm on the frame, I could feel it. A small, stubborn heartbeat, so I worked alone for 11 months. No crew, just a low radio, and the buzz of Sanders. I-sistered joists rebuilt the stone chimney, hand-sanded window frames until the grain showed me who I used to be. Rewired 2 brass boat lanterns. I found outside Savannah and hid solar lines so they glowed amber. At dusk stained the new dock. A deep pine branded 1925 into a cedar plaque for the gable-planted wildflowers. In 2 whiskey barrels hung a brass bell by the door. And when I finally sat with a beer at sundown, the quiet had weight like the place was breathing again. Then the letter came cream envelope with a gold pine in the corner. Fancy smell, like somebody's perfume. Signature from Diane Kincaid. President, Architectural Review. Maple Cove Estates. It said, my visible additions violated Section 9B, that the 1925 sign was misleading, that barrels could invite pests gave me 10 business days, or pay a $100 fine. And I laughed the kind of laugh that comes with disbelief, taped my deed to the letter, and wrote with a Sharpie. I'm not part of your HOA. My property is outside your jurisdiction. Do not contact me again. Mailed it certified with a trout sticker, because I get petty when I'm pushed. 48 hours later, 2 Maple Cove enforcement polos were on my dock, snapping photos of the lanterns like they were building a felony case I filmed from the path, and asked if I could help them trespass more efficiently. The tall one said, we enforce the visual corridor. The short one crossed his arms like he was waiting for his protein shake to hit. I pointed at the boulders that mark my line and said, your corridor ends right there. Step off my dock. He dropped a red-stamped final notice and announced a $600 penalty. If I didn't comply by month's end, I called the sheriff and got the tired civil matter, sir. And I hung up before I earned my own citation. I upgraded my fence sign to private property, not a member of Maple Cove HOA, and tried to breathe, but the squeeze arrived in small, legal-smelling doses. My garbage pickup skipped 2 weeks after an anonymous complaint about non-conforming receptacles joggers stopped nodding on the lakeside trail. A paddle boat made a quiet U-turn when I walked down. With coffee flyers appeared in my mailbox that said, Community Harmony. Expectations and outliers undermine cohesion. Same Maple Cove font, no return address. And I shook them out like phrases that sound like they were focus grouped in a room without windows. The night before the sign burned, the brass bell clinked twice in no wind. I sat up in the dark, the way you do when your mind hears footsteps. It can't prove by the time the smoke hit my nose, the cedar was already curling into a black grin. Camera wires were cut clean, the DVR smashed and left on the floor like a calling card. No footprints I could trust. Just that ugly, sweet smell of scorched wood and the taste of someone else's power in my mouth. In the morning, I made a bigger sign branded 1925 again, bolted a steel plate under it that said, "Private land, not subject to Maple Cove policies. Footage archives to off-site. Trespassers will be prosecuted." And I realized it wasn't about barrels or lanterns anymore. It was the idea that a clipboard could redraw your reality and dare you to argue. I'm slow to anger, but when it lands, it sets up camp. So I put the kettle on, opened my laptop, lined up my certified survey next to the county's public GIS map. At first, they looked the same blue water parcel lines like veins. Then I caught the curve on the public viewer. A new arc of boundary brushed my shoreline just enough to graze the dock. Not on my deed, not on the stamped survey new, and when I held the screenshots side by side, the hair on my arms stood up. I drove to the Ashford County Records office the next morning. Old carpet-buzzing lights, a copy machine that sighed like a smoker. A clerk named Marta Ellison pulled the internal county record, and the boundary was straight. Stamps clean. Then opened the public viewer, and there it was. Again. The curve she clicked into the revision log and looked at me over her glasses like a librarian. Who found a ripped page, the upload request had been submitted as a correction and approved without secondary verification. I asked who submitted it. She chewed her lip, turned the monitor, and I read the credential. Like a quiet fire cracking Deacon-Cade. I didn't crow. I filed a formal challenge and left with a stamped receipt that said the audit team would review if you've ever poked a muddy puddle and hit something metal. You know that thunk. You know what I mean? I went home, dragged a folding table into the living room, and started a war binder deed. Survey photos, certified scans of every letter, screenshots of the maps. Then I added a tab called History, because trouble echoes 2 hours into a digital rabbit hole. I found a 1993 case, Harold Pierce v. Maple Cove Estates. The bad kind of scan he had owned my cabin back when Maple Cove was still trying to name itself. They tried to seize the lot as a community shoreline. Amenity he fought and won a permanent injunction that bound successors, the kind of language that outlives stationery and haircuts. I tracked down his granddaughter Lydia in an apartment outside Macon. Expected her to hang up, she didn't. Granddad called them white-collar termites, she said. And we met in a diner that smelled like hash browns and fundraisers. She slid me a shoebox. Letters. A 2008 cadastral correction, where the county fixed a mapping glitch in favor of the cabin. A photo of Harold on the porch with a flag behind him, and a carbon copy of a historic designation application that had been suspended pending jurisdiction after the HOA objected to visible, aged facade, not matching community cohesion, which is a poetic way to say it didn't match their vinyl siding. I scanned everything, backed it up 3 times, mailed a USB to my sister in Oregon with a note that read, "Open if I go missing." And still the fines kept climbing now. 900 plus fees. Diane's 8:17 p.m. Email said, "Remove the distractions and restore visual harmony." It doesn't have to be difficult, so I hired a surveyor with a drone, a quiet kid named Noah Pike who could talk orthomosaics. Like football, he confirmed my boundary sits 57 feet outside Maple Cove's line and stamped every deliverable with his license number. We took the files to Marta, and she went still. The public viewer had been replaced again, so I filed a second challenge, then a third, and those finally tripped a records integrity review bureaucrat. For now, everybody has to pay attention. Maple Cove shifted tactics and sent a notice to compel arbitration before the Tri-County Architectural Standards Board. Which is what you get when HOA reps decide they're a court. They cited visual easement doctrine, which sounded fancy and fake. I said fine. Formal sounds like records. Hired a civil litigator named Clinton Hale, who smells like printer toner and only smiles when he reads line items. We filed for restoration of boundary integrity, a cease and desist on administrative interference, and a preliminary injunction for harassment, trespass, and public records tampering. Arbitration landed on a Thursday that felt like a wet towel. Diane showed in a navy pantsuit with a binder that deserved a parking permit. They started with safety and nostalgia, unregulated illumination, misleading signage, and Clinton slid 2 printouts. Like cards in a bar, a forensic download of the county's genuine zoning packet and the Maple Cove packet. Diane tendered stamps didn't match. Footers didn't match metadata on their PDF. Said it was compiled at 11:42 p.m. on a MacBook registered to D. Kincaid, the chair, stopped the proceeding and sent everything to district court. And fear left like a tide. I didn't know how far it had gone until I looked down and saw sand. In the weeks before trial, Maple Cove went quiet. In the loud way. No more flyers, no dawn knocking, no polos measuring my flour barrels. I filed open records requests for emails with my parcel number, got blacked out pages, and a mistake that felt like daylight. A thread titled Shoreline Access Roadmap, where a board member wrote fold the non-compliant parcel into the overlay. Once the public file is updated, you can pretend a lot of things are clerical error. You can't pretend. Intent. You typed with your own fingers. That happened. Trial stretched 4 days. Judge Renee Coulter ran a tight room with no patience for HOA poetry. Noah walked through the drone survey and boundary markers. Marta explained the internal file versus the public viewer and read the credential out loud. Lydia told the story of her grandfather's fight and handed over the injunction that still lives. Maple Cove's attorney tried to recast everything as enthusiastic oversight and floated the shared utility corridor idea to temporarily manage my shoreline. While jurisdiction got clarified, the judge asked under what authority and got word salad. Clinton saved the email for last and read the fold. The parcel line. Then put up a trail cam. Still of a figure in a high-vis vest crouched by my marker stones at 5:11 a.m. The SD card kept what the cloud couldn't. Judge Coulter set her glasses down and spoke like someone closing a door gently. And finally, the parcel is wholly outside Maple Cove jurisdiction, and has been, since its creation. The 1993 injunction remains. Binding the Blue Heron cabin. Is granted historic status, Maple Cove is permanently enjoined from interfering public records, tampering, and administrative fraud tied to the credential. Kincaid are referred to the district attorney damages and fees to follow. The bailiff took one step toward Diane's table, her clipboard tilted. Papers slid like a little landslide. She didn't look at me, and I didn't need her to. The dock creaked in my head, the way wood remembers how to float. The gavel fell, and I stood there. not smiling, just breathing. Here's the part. No judge can hand you. The quiet after a fight doesn't promise you won the season. Only the inning there are still open seats on HOA boards. Still neighbors who think conformity is a cure. Still maps a careless hand can drag with a mouse. Maybe Diane is gone. Maybe someone like her is practicing that smile in a mirror. I won what mattered. The lines on the ground, the right to let a place be exactly what it is. The proof that paper can defend you if you stack enough truth inside it. Does that make me safe? Or just lucky this time? I don't know. I know the lanterns glow at dusk. The bell gives a clean little note when the wind taps it. And tomorrow, I'll mow the strip that grows wild between the markers and check the trail cams because power doesn't vanish. It changes shape. If you're still with me, tell me straight. Was I right to push back, or did I go too far? Do HOAs defend community, or just a certain kind of comfort? Have you seen rules wielded like a weapon or a map used? Like a lie, drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and your worst neighbor story. Hit subscribe if you want more real fights that end right where the truth lands, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next chapter.